Hello, Lacey here. Welcome back to my channel. This is today and the last few days prompts for the 30 or answers for the prompts in the 31 days of witchcraft. This is a list of prompts and a hashtag that was created by Heather Carter. Heather Carter is amazing. Definitely take a look at the link down below where I have her original video introducing this really fun hashtag for May, as well as the list of all the prompts down below. I was doing these every day and then a little bit of a wrench got thrown in my life and here I am. So I'm going to try to get caught up on the last 4 days, but I'm going to start by mentioning that the first prompt that was from Saturday was about how you practice magic like every day, or how you incorporate magic into your everyday life. And for that, that's easy because I basically covered that in my answer to the question about what my focus of my practice is right now, because that was my answer, was that my focus is on putting magic into my everyday life in small ways to sort of weave it in and integrate it. So I talk about that more in that video, which I will link in the cards up somewhere in the eye up there, I think over there. Maybe over there, probably over there. And then the next two prompts were about two principles of sort of, I guess you could say, traditional Wiccan ethics. One of which is the Wiccan Rede, which is about harm none, do what you will, do what thou wilt, I think is the official quote. And the other is about the Threefold Law of Return and whether you believe in that. And on this whole concept of sort of ethics in witchcraft, I will say that my beliefs and my approach have definitely evolved over time. And I think a lot of that has to do with my progress along my self-worth path and how confident I feel about who I am as a person and how much, I guess, I trust myself to make ethical decisions, or I guess decisions about my magic in line with my ethical foundation, I guess is the best way I could express that. When I was new to the craft, I definitely leaned into those principles because I think in a lot of ways, well, particularly the harm none, because I remember actually feeling very confident about my practices because of the Wiccan Rede. It gave me that reassurance that there was a moral compass to what I was doing. And because a lot of the, I guess, propaganda about witchcraft and Wicca at the time, and possibly still, I don't know, I guess I'm kind of far removed from it now, but a lot of that propaganda, I don't know if that's the right word to use, was basically implying that this was like devil worship and that it was evil and blah, blah, blah. So knowing that there was a moral compass embedded in the belief system of Wicca helped me to explore the craft and explore the faith and the spiritual side of witchcraft and Wicca, while knowing that there was something there intended to keep things in balance. And whether it's the Bible and the 7 deadly sins or 10 commandments or whatnot, or, you know, if it's the Wiccan Rede, the idea of these principles, I think, are to give you something to lean into when you're not sure what the right thing to do is. But I think as I've grown older, that's gotten more complicated in a way, and also I've gotten more confident about it in a way. I don't feel like I need to lean into some sort of external structure to know what the right thing to do is. And I think really most of us don't need that. We're just raised to think we need that, if that makes any sense. Our culture says that we need that. But I think for most humans, not wanting to cause harm is our default setting. And I do think that gets messed up for a lot of reasons for some people. And I think a lot of us struggle with that at different times in our lives and for different reasons. But ultimately, I think our default is to not want to cause harm. And I don't believe we come into this world with malintent or the ability to cause harm just there. I think a lot of that is through nurture. I think a lot of that comes out when, you know, people are raised in abusive settings or, you know, I'm sidetracking. The point of all of this that I'm trying to say is that I think that people are inherently good. And that belief has gotten me into a crap ton of trouble in my life because, especially when I was in my 20s and even in my early 30s, I sometimes take that belief on so much that I let people hurt me. And I think when it comes to my craft and the my approach to the ethical boundaries around my craft and my practice, what I've learned is that it's not as simple as good and evil, right? And yet, I think that where I'm at has come a lot more into a more neutral space in a way. I've learned that sometimes you need to have really, really, really strong boundaries around yourself. And sometimes those boundaries need to have fucking thorns on them. Because when you're in that, and that's true in my magical practice too, like a lot of my energetic work around protection used to be very carefully crafted in a way so that I could be completely confident that even if somebody came for me, they wouldn't get hurt in the process. And like, you don't put up a fence and then not defend the fence, right? And I think that's where my energetic practices have shifted some. I also think that what I've learned at this point in my life is that it's nearly impossible to do anything and have there be no harm. This is the whole thing about ripple effects and the way that one small decision can ripple out for good or for bad. And sometimes you don't always know where that's going to go. Does that mean you're not responsible for it? No, of course not. Of course you're responsible. I mean, that's where my witchcraft centers on the idea, or the idea of the word witch being the buck stops here, right? Like, you're still responsible for the consequences of your actions. And sometimes those consequences aren't super pleasant, and sometimes you choose that path anyway. And sometimes that's how you stay safe. And I think the reason this is a little bit trickier for me to talk about is because I spent so many years tying myself into knots and hurting myself over and over and over again to make other people more comfortable. I was so afraid that I would inadvertently cause harm to others that I regularly caused harm to myself. And not in an active way, but in a passive letting harm come to me kind of way. Just to be clear about what I mean by that. So it's muddy. And ethical ground in general is muddy, I think. And I think when we really take the time to parse this stuff and think about it, it gets messy and it gets muddy, and we make mistakes and we do the best we can. And I'm at a place where I can't afford to hurt myself or let myself be hurt for the comfort of others. And I'm really actually quite glad this is the place I've come to, because it's changed the energy of my life in a lot of ways, and it's been a really amazing growth journey. Anyway, I'm very much digressing. So the threefold law of return, yes, I believe in it. I don't think it's like specifically three, but I do in general feel like when people have bad intention, have an intention to cause harm, because this is, I think, what the real defining factor is for me. When the intent is neutral or positive, then I think that what you get back is neutral or positive. Now, I don't think that means that, like, sometimes you can have a positive intent and a bad outcome, and that bad outcome can have an effect that causes harm, and you are ultimately going to have some sort of consequence for that. Sometimes that consequence is just, it's intangible, and sometimes it's tangible. But I think when your intent is bad, when your intent is to cause harm, then I do think that what you receive back karmically, or however you want to look at that, your the return to you energetically, is magnified in some way. To me, it simply is just like a matter of what makes sense to me from like a justice perspective, right? I feel like in general, the universe wants things kept in balance, but where malicious intent exists, where harmful intent exists, I do think there's this sort of, to bring balance back in a way, it's like not equal. I'm not very good at expressing this, but yeah, in general, I agree that it's like what you put out, you get back magnified. I just don't think it's like a specific number. That's the short answer to that. But yes, I think it's all based on intent. And even when I say that, I know that it's more complicated than that. It's not even just intent. there's something more there. I just can't quite put my finger on how to express it. Because of course people can do really bad things with good intentions. And this is where what I mean, where I see sort of like consequence and karma as sort of not quite exactly the same thing. Like I think there's, if you throw a ball in the air, it's going to fall back down, right? Like that's a consequence. That's something that like physically, tangibly happens as a result of throwing the ball up. This is a terrible example. But whereas karma, I feel like, is like if you throw a ball up intentionally to like hit an animal flying through the air and that animal falls down dead because you wanted to do that and there was no purpose to do that other than just to cause harm, yeah, the ball's of course going to fall back down and the bird's going to fall down and you're going to have to deal with the consequences of all of that. Maybe somebody walks by and they have an opinion about this and you know, that's all going to happen. And also there's going to be this karmic return energetically where and that's what I think. And I think the reason that my feelings about this are framed around intent and around purpose and what is actually trying to happen is because so many of us have experienced horrible things in our lives that we are certainly not responsible for. Bad things happen to good people all the time. Bad things happen to good people. And because I believe everybody's inherently good, like that's their default setting, even if they get conditioned to be bad, I think that it's so much more complicated. I feel like I'm not making any sense, but this is what I do when I try to talk before coffee, and this is what I signed up for with this 31 Days of Witchcraft. I think that I think there's natural checks and balances in place. And I want to also say that I think that the purpose, this is interesting because I don't think that karma exists just to punish people. I don't think of it as like a punishment energy. I think of it as a teaching energy. If you're doing things that you know are not good and are going to cause harm and you're doing them on purpose anyway, and the universe is going to smack you down, right? Like I feel like that's like no different than a parent scolding a child and teaching them the right way. You can't learn if you don't experience some of those things yourself. And I mean, I've certainly made bad decisions and had not only consequences, but karmic backlash for sure. And I've seen it happen too much in my life and the lives of those around me for me to not believe that it is a thing. Yeah, that's what I had to say about that. 12 minutes in and I got one more prompt to cover because I was like behind. This is the 4th day. Okay, so the 4th prompt is, do you have a separate magical name? And I think there might have been like an and if so, why kind of situation. When I was new to the craft, I learned that you should have a magical name and you should not tell anybody about it ever because then they can hurt you. I don't know how much I believe in that. That feels very superstitious, but I do have a magical name. I'm pretty free with it, honestly. But I also have some really strong protection around me and I worry less about that. That said, I've never told family about my magical name for a very good reason. I've never told, I don't know. I don't like share it around. It's weird. I might tell a stranger. Like I've had a couple of experiences where I've just thrown it out without thinking and been like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And I don't tell them that's what it is, but I've definitely mentioned it in the past. And I've had the same one for 20 some odd years and it's got some very important significance to me at this stage. I don't entirely know why. I do know that it's what I use on the astral, and that ended up turning into something that had a great deal of significance. And I'm super vague YouTubing because I don't really want to get into it because it's pretty personal. But I will say, having a magical name and using that magical name on the astral was something that I didn't fully understand why it was important until I was like 15 years into doing it. And something shifted on the astral for me, and it was kind of revealed why that was the name, what it meant, what its purpose was, and what it revealed about who I am. And it was really, really powerful stuff. So I don't ultimately know, like when I first chose it, it felt kind of silly and like play acty kind of. And then over the years, it just developed all of this meaning and depth. And so yeah, for me, it has a lot of significance. I think it can be helpful as a technique for recognizing that you're working on the astral. I think having a name that you use in that space, in your astral temple or in the space where you do that kind of work, can be really a great way to help you shift into that headspace or into that state. So for me, it was helpful for that as well. in a way, for me, astral work is almost a kind of shape-shifting anyway. So having that name to shift into, having that that self, that purest form of you that you can really embody in that space has been really empowering for me, and really good for my magical growth, my spiritual growth. Okay, that was a lot. That was a lot. Hopefully I will see you guys tomorrow. I actually had filmed this, one of these videos yesterday when I only had 3 prompts to catch up with. And then I uploaded it, and it turned out that the video and the audio were completely out of sync. So if that's happened again, I'm gonna be real annoyed, and I may just upload it anyway, and you may just have to like not look at it and just listen because I don't want to lose my words a second time. So anyway, we'll see how it goes. If you are watching this, it means I was successful in some fashion, and thank you. Thank you for hanging out with me, and this has been a really enjoyable experience, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the month of prompts. If you are participating in 31 Days of Witchcraft, make sure you're using the hashtag, and definitely let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these subjects. If you're not, don't worry about it. You can comment down below with any opinions or thoughts about stuff. And there was something else I was going to say. I can't remember. Like, share, subscribe, all the good things. Hit the little bell to get all the notifications. And if you want to book a reading, you can do that with me over at supportivetarot.com. Thanks, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.